You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
PackersTalk.com.
You're listening to No Huddle Radio on the Packers Talk Radio Network, your home for in-depth and thoughtful Packers analysis. I'm your host, Gil Martin. My co-host is my good friend, Sean Tehan. In addition to this show, I write for the PackersPost.com and Cheesehead TV, and Sean was a TV sportscaster in Minnesota. We're here to talk Packers because you're all here for one thing, and that's a love for Green Bay football. Sean, how we doing after that rough loss a week ago?
Could have been worse, but it could also, the only way we can go from here, Gil, is up. And obviously not a home game this weekend, but maybe we can get back on that upward trajectory when they're back in a few weeks. And Ticket King, Wisconsin's own Ticket King, they're there to help us out. They've been sponsoring our show, and for over 30 years, they've been providing Packers tickets to Packer fans, as well as Brewer tickets. Brewers going to the playoffs. They start next week, crazy enough. Bucks tickets, they open up training camp next week, so Bucks season right around the corner. And Summerfest tickets. That's not till next year. But you can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. Again, theticketking.com. It's right there on your screen if you're following with us on YouTube today. Thank you so much. You can watch every episode of No Huddle Radio on Packers Talk Network with Gil and myself on YouTube. Click on the bell, turn the notifications on, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your enemies. You can join the discussion, chat with us live. Love to see and talk about the comments coming our way. And Gil, it was that was a rough game on Sunday, but we're going to move onward. And we will kind of recap that a little bit. But obviously, big game and Big D coming up this Sunday. And the return of Micah Parsons, obviously traded about a month ago to the Green Bay Packers after contract negotiations fell through between him and Jerry Jones. And the Packers end up trading for him, trade a couple first-round picks, and Kenny Clark, who we'll talk about later in this episode too. And he inks a huge contract extension, the richest contract for a defensive player in NFL history with the Packers. And Parsons go back to Dallas. Doesn't sound like there's going to be any tribute for him there. He was there for 4 seasons. It's only 4 seasons, but 12-plus sacks in each of those first 4 years. He was very good. But what should we expect as Packer fans, Gil, of Micah Parsons in his return to AT&T Stadium, to Dallas?
Let's just say the juices will be flowing. He will be excited. He will be amped up, and I anticipate him rising to the occasion and try to make a statement to Jerry Jones in particular that you made a mistake in trading me. And the fact that Jones is not just the owner, but he's also the GM just makes it even more juicy for Parsons to send that message.
For me, I think my expectations of Parsons, obviously, I think there's a lot of vitriol there between him and Jerry Jones, potentially, because he did want to stay in Dallas, but just business is business. Business got in the way of essentially what they wanted to accomplish in the end. But me, I expect the same thing out of Micah Parsons that I've seen in each of his first 3 games in Green Bay. And that's just consistent pressure, consistent attack on the quarterback, and just a consistent essentially a guy that, you got to make an opposing offense. You got to make sure that you have an eye on him at all times. And he has brought it every single week he's been with the Packers, Gil, albeit on a limited basis the first couple weeks, but he's getting a larger and larger role. And I expect the same thing out of Micah Parsons, but yeah, maybe a couple sacks would help too with the storyline and everything. But Micah Parsons has been nothing but spectacular for the Green Bay Packers so far. I expect nothing less than that going into this game on Sunday.
No, I agree. If anything, there'll be a little more. That's kind of what I was trying to get at, that he'll be more amped up, a little bit more psyched, a little bit more in his own mind that he has something to prove. But yeah, he's already delivered at a very high level over the first 3 games. And when you consider he was on a play count for the first 2 at least, it's even more impressive. And it's not just how many sacks did Micah Parsons get today. It's how does his presence impact all the players around him? And it really is a ripple effect where what he does helps Lucas Van Ness. Rashawn Gary is leading the NFL in sacks right now. He's not leading, most likely, the NFL in sacks unless the Packers acquire Micah Parsons. The fact that opposing offenses cannot throw the ball downfield on the Packers has a lot to do with the addition of Micah Parsons. And so many things that Jeff Hafley is able to strategize and plan for and implement right now in his defense is because of the addition of this immensely talented edge rusher. So the ripple effect is there. It's a great thing to see. The fact is, through 3 games, no opposing offense, and they've faced 2 of the top offenses in the league, has gained more than 250 yards in a game against the Packers. No team has scored 20 or more points in a game against the Packers through 3 games. All of that, in part, is due to Micah Parsons.
Nobody's even gotten to the end zone in the first half of any of these 3 games so far this season. And I know the Browns offense, that the offense is not the reason why they won that game on Sunday. It's because of their defense, which is outstanding. That's probably the best defense the Packers are going to face all season. But essentially, Commanders and Lions, you kept them out of the end zone the first 2 weeks. That's pretty darn impressive too. But with Micah Parsons too, Gil, I mean, he elevates this team on a whole nother level. And obviously it's just, he didn't have a sack last week, but like you said, the consistent pressure of the quarterback, he opens everything else up for everybody else. I do want to ask you this though. Do you think he's going to get more applause or more boos from the Dallas fans on Sunday?
I think it'll be mixed.
That's what I'm asking, but it's like, do you think it's going to be 60% one way or,
I think he'll get a little bit more applause, but I think there may be, look, to me, part of it is this. How are Cowboys fans feeling about Jerry Jones?
Yeah.
If they blame Jerry Jones more than Micah Parsons for his departure, I think there'll be mostly a positive response. But if they think Jerry Jones was reasonable and Micah Parsons just was pigheaded and wanted too much money, the boos will rain down.
I don't know too many Dallas Cowboy fans, Gil, but I do know some. Most of them are very angry still with Jerry Jones.
Yeah,
they really,
rightfully so.
Yeah, and some are kind of upset where it's like, oh, like Parsons made, maybe like Parsons made it kind of difficult negotiations, but he just wanted his agent to represent him and talk to Jerry Jones, and Jerry Jones didn't want to go through his agent, David Mulugeta, who's has a very good relationship with the Packers front office, obviously, with Jordan Love and Xavier McKinney also being there. And Brian Gutekunst has been very public in the past where him and David Mulugeta have a very good working relationship with one another. I agree, though. I think it's going to be more applause because I think people are more angry with Jerry Jones than they were with Micah Parsons when this whole trade went down.
And rightfully so, in my mind. I mean, I've never been a fan of Jerry Jones. He came into the league, and the very first thing he did, in my mind, was disrespect Tom Landry.
Oh, big time.
Not that he shouldn't have moved on from Tom Landry, but there's a way to do it that shows a little bit more respect for a guy who was, at that point, the only head coach in Cowboys history, who's in the Hall of Fame.
Greatest head coach in Cowboys history, too.
By far. So, in my mind, it was one strike against Jerry Jones the minute he walked in the door practically. And, love him or hate him, he's been successful, although it's been a long time, Cowboys fans, since the Dallas Cowboys have won a Super Bowl.
Still boggles my mind that Tom Landry was defensive coordinator, Vince Lombardi was offensive coordinator, both for the New York Giants before they got their head coaching gigs. Unbelievable coaching tree right there.
Oh, absolutely. And if you think about it, it makes the Ice Bowl even that more interesting because like nowadays, few people talk about that. Yeah. In the day, I'm sure a lot more people did.
Oh, for sure. And let's, but Gil, before we fully move towards week 4, we got to recap that disaster on Lake Erie on Sunday against the Browns, where the Packers lose 13-10. The offensive line got absolutely manhandled, and a guy who really was angering a lot of fans and frustrating a lot of fans was 2024 first-round pick Jordan Morgan, and he was selected over a guy who we talked about leading up to that draft. He was selected over Graham Barton, who's playing very well for Tampa right now, a versatile offensive lineman who the Packers end up passing on. Jordan Morgan did not have a good game. But you know what? Nobody else in that offensive line had a very good game. It looked like they were out sucking a few beers back maybe the night before because the way they played, it was bad. I mean, the Cleveland Browns defensive line is unbelievable. Myles Garrett he's at the same level as Micah Parsons. And Sunday confirmed that for sure. But Gil, I got to ask you this because this is something that I feel like is on a lot of Packer fans' mind. But what's your confidence level in 2024 first-round pick Jordan Morgan? And on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very confident, 1 being zero confidence whatsoever, or 0 to 10. Let's go 0 to 10. What's your confidence level of Jordan Morgan right now?
As of right now, it's probably about a 4. Long term, it's probably a 7. But for what he can do on the field, this Sunday, it's maybe about a 3.5 to 4.
I'm going to be a little higher because I've been notably bullish on Jordan Morgan, and I'd say like a 5 or a 6, like a 5.5, we'll call it. And the big thing is where it's like, it wasn't just him who struggled on Sunday. Everybody was bad. He wasn't, it's not like he was the reason why everyone sucked. Everyone sucked on the O-line on Sunday. They did. And the thing is with him, he probably essentially having the first round label, you're always going to get the most attention having that first round label. Lucas Van Ness has dealt with that, but now he seems to be really coming into his own as a defensive lineman and a former first round pick. But Jordan Morgan played left guard, and right tackle on Sunday. He played 3 different positions. That's really hard to ask of anybody in the NFL. I don't care if you've been in the NFL for 15 years. I don't care if you're an all-pro and you're at the top of your game. You're asking a guy to play 3 different positions, not only in just a season, but in one game. Yeah. Good God, man! Like give the guy a little bit of leash because that's a lot. That's a tall task for anybody to ask of.
And I get the feeling. Like, I like, in theory, the cross-training idea, the versatility idea.
Yeah.
But I get the feeling that at this point, they should pick a position for him and have him concentrate on that position for the rest of the year. Look, you could spend the offseason, OTAs, training camp, mini camp, preseason, playing him at 6 different positions. You could have him line up a tight end for all I care.
Yeah.
But once the season starts, barring injury, have him focus on one position and let him do his thing. I think he's probably in the long run better suited for guard than he is for tackle in the NFL, but I'm not 100% convinced that he couldn't be a good NFL tackle. But bottom line is that I think he'll get there. I'm not saying he's a bust. I'm not saying he can't become a very good starting lineman. I think he can, but I think the cross training has hurt him a little bit over the course of the last 2 years.
I think it speaks to why the Packers love to cross train their offensive linemen. We know that they do that quite a bit. Elton Jenkins has played every position practically on that offensive line. Sean Ryan's really stuck on the interior. Rasheed Walker's really stuck at left tackle, but like Zach Tom's a guy who can play all across the line too. Yeah. With Jordan Morgan, it's interesting where I think they admire his talent. They think he's a talented guy because they want him to know so many positions where he could come in at the drop of a hat. And that's the situation. But I agree with you where it's getting to a point where it's like, hey, maybe it's like if a guy on the left side goes down, where if the starting offensive lineman is in there from left to right, Rasheed Walker, Aaron Banks, Elton Jenkins, Sean Ryan, Zach Tom. Left side, if someone gets hurt or someone goes down, Jordan Morgan goes down the left side, left tackle or left guard. If it's right side, it's Darian Kennard or Anthony Belton. Right. You just try to keep it. Essentially, I don't want to really limit him to a position specifically. It's more so one side of the football because he's not going to play center. Just have him learn the left side or have him learn the right side and have him get comfortable there. Just because fundamentally it's so different when you're on each side of the line. It really is. I mean, I played offensive line back in the day. I didn't play at the NFL level, obviously. I didn't play at the college level. But I could tell you, just your footwork is totally different when you go from one side to another. And it's hard to adjust to that, especially when you're working primarily on one side. And I think that's where Jordan Morgan is right now, where it's like just have him be at one side so he can get his fundamentals down and really get in a rhythm on one side of the offensive line.
Yeah, I agree. And look, let's be clear about this. It wasn't just Jordan Morgan. And Chris in the comments is saying he can't get over how bad the offensive line looked.
I can't either, Chris. I can't either.
No, he says it's burned into my brain, and it is. But you know what? Let's talk about this. You mentioned Elton Jenkins. He was one of the best linemen on this team. He himself said, I had a terrible game against the Cleveland Browns. Yeah. Obviously, having Aaron Banks get hurt again midway through the game, having Zach Tom, their best offensive lineman, leave the game after one play did not bode well. But I would like to see a little more, as you mentioned, some continuity as to who's going where and why and when, and just to give these guys a better idea of what's expected of them and what their assignments are.
I feel like the Packers were spoiled last year, pretty much having the whole offensive line intact for the whole season. And, we even talked about this in training camp where it's like you figured that they were going to get snake bitten by injuries because they really didn't get hit hard until the playoffs last year to end the season, where in Philadelphia, Elton Jenkins goes down and they were a whole freaking mess, You figured this was coming.
Look, last year, what was it? 4 out of 5 or all 5 starters played more than 1,000 snaps.
I think it was 5. Yeah, I think it
was 5. Because Josh Myers was the only one who missed a start. He missed one game, and that was it. The odds of that being replicated were slim to none, and it's already not going to be replicated because that injury to Zach Tom is probably not going to be just a game or two. But, the bottom line is you drafted Anthony Belton for a reason. You brought in Kennard for a reason. You drafted Jordan Morgan for a reason. You got to go out there, and these guys have got to perform, and Elton Jenkins has got to be better. And he himself, like I said, admitted that.
For sure. And, speaking of those injuries, let's go over the Packer injury report going into this week. You mentioned Zach Tom Gill. He's dealing with that oblique. He hasn't practiced at all this week. Doesn't sound like he's going to play on Sunday, probably for the best long-term, especially with the bye week coming up after Sunday's game. Aaron Banks, he's dealing with that groin issue. He hasn't practiced this week. Javon Bullard did not practice on Wednesday due to being in the concussion protocol, but he was fortunately limited on Thursday. And then Anthony Belton, the rookie right tackle, ankle issue, was limited Wednesday. He didn't practice on Thursday, so some hit to the depth right there on the offensive line right there. Limited participants so far this week. Tucker Kraft still dealing with that minor knee issue, which he was fortunately able to play on Sunday. Also dealing with an elbow injury. Devontae Wyatt, he left Sunday's game at Cleveland with a knee issue, considered day-to-day. Fortunately, he's been practicing in a limited capacity. Rasheed Walker's dealing with a quad. Micah Parsons returns to the injury report with a back injury. Josh Jacobs is limited this week with an ankle. And then Carl Brooks with a foot injury, also limited. And John Fitzpatrick also limited. Full participant, though. Good news. Jordan Love still with the left thumb. He's been full participant this week. Nate Hobbs with that knee that kept him out of game 1 and most of the back end of training camp. Also been full participant this week. And Bo Melton dealing with the shoulder injury that he suffered in week 1. He's been a full participant this week as well. Now, Gil, let's get into the matchup. The Cowboys offense, the Packers defense. We're going to start there. And these are the strengths of these teams right now. Dallas, total offense this year, 4th overall in the NFL 3 weeks in. They're top 10 in scoring. They're top 5 in passing. And they're 11th overall in running the ball. And the Packers defense, well, they've been super good. 3rd overall in total defense. That has not been the problem this year. It wasn't the problem definitely on Sunday in the loss at Cleveland. They are the top scoring defense, top 10 in passing yards allowed, and top 3 in rushing yards allowed this year. Gil, what's a matchup that you're looking forward to watching between Dallas and Green Bay? Dallas, we'll play spoiler in case you haven't heard, probably not going to have CeeDee Lamb on Sunday. That is huge for the Packers defense. What's the matchup that we should be looking forward to watching between the Cowboys offense and the Packers D?
I got to start with Micah Parsons and that Packers pass rush trying to get after Dak Prescott. And, the Cowboys offensive line, not 100%.
Nope.
Not even close. I can't say they were elite to begin with, but they were solid. But now with those holes, you got Micah Parsons all jacked up, as we said, all ready to go. Rashawn Gary has been playing well. We talked about Lucas Van Ness. Devontae Wyatt has a lot of pressures from the inside. If the Packers can get some consistent pressure on Dak Prescott, it changes the whole equation for the Dallas offense.
You mentioned the Dallas Cowboys offensive line. Their starting offensive line, they're missing center Cooper Beebe. He's on IR right now, so they're going to be out without him. Their first-round pick, right guard Tyler Booker, he hasn't been practicing this week with injuries. He's doubtful, most likely, to play on Sunday. And then you have a young guy left tackle and Tyler Guyton, Right tackle Terrence Steele is a solid veteran. Left guard Tyler Smith is a pretty decent player. But overall, though, it's like the Cowboys' offensive line is going to have a tall task ahead. And obviously, you got to deal with Micah Parsons and his return to Dallas. Rashawn Gary's the NFL sack leader with 4.5 this year, as you mentioned earlier this episode, Gil. The Packers overall, 10 sacks this season. That's 5th most in the NFL through the first 3 weeks. They're one of 5 teams with 10 sacks entering week 4. The others are Denver, the Rams, Detroit, and what do you know? The Cleveland Browns as well. So this is the matchup where the Packers' defensive front has been awesome throughout the year, and you can't expect nothing less than that coming up on Sunday against a beleaguered Dallas offensive line.
Yeah, and that's a matchup the Packers have to take advantage of. If you give Dak Prescott too much time, even with the injuries that he's dealing with CeeDee Lamb, as you mentioned, and the receiving core, you give him too much time, he's too good a quarterback. He will pick you apart. And I don't think the Packers want to get involved in a shootout in this game. That is not the MO. Dallas would love a shootout. That would be more to their liking, I think. So, you get pass rush, you get pressure on Dak Prescott. We've seen in the past that you can force him into mistakes. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and you mentioned Dak Prescott, and that's kind of the matchup I'm looking forward to is Dak Prescott against Packers defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley. See what Hafley cooks up because he's been really on a heater to open up the season. Dak is very good. He's good enough to carry an offense, but he's going to be without CeeDee Lamb most likely. He had that high ankle sprain suffered against the Bears in their loss on Sunday in Chicago. And Dak's been solid overall to start the year. He's 4th in the NFL in passing yards. He's tied for 5th in completion percentage. He has thrown a few interceptions, 86.1 passer rating. The Packers, their opposing passer rating is 77.8. That's 8th best in the NFL right now. And it's going to be very interesting to see what Dak can do without his top receiving target. He's got George Pickens. He's got Jake Ferguson. Javonte Williams out of the backfield has had a good start to the year. But this game's really going to come down to number 4 in Dallas and what Jeff Hafley, what kind of scheme that he's got dialed up to defend the Cowboys offense coming up this weekend.
And Hafley's been so good so far this year. You almost get the feeling he's like a kid in a candy store. He has so many good choices, so many options, and he's putting them all to good use. I mean, 3 games, no teams with 250 yards, no teams with 20 or more points. You faced Washington and Detroit, 2 of the more potent offenses in the league.
Yeah.
As Daryl in the comments said, Jeff Hafley, defensive mastermind. The only drawback to that is you get the feeling that he's going to be a head coach sooner than later.
Yeah, I saw something online where people are saying, we got to start, just really weird rumors about Jeff Hafley so he doesn't get a head coaching job, where someone said where it's like, hey, I saw him at the grocery store and he cut off an old woman in the aisle. So, that's just making up petty things like that where it's like, you don't want this guy. He's trouble because he's been that good. I mean, Detroit, they held Detroit to 13 points in week 1. And I know it's week 1 and it's kind of a sloppy week in general, but Detroit has scored 90 points in their last 2 games.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. And that last touchdown was really in garbage time for Detroit. They really held that offense to 6 points. And Washington, you saw what they did with Marcus Mariota at quarterback last week, where they dropped 34, 40 points, whatever it was. And Jeff Hafley has made himself a top head coaching candidate in a hurry for sure.
To add to it, against Cleveland, the only touchdown that Cleveland scored came after the interception that set them up inside the Packers' 10-yard line.
A 4-yard drive.
Yeah.
I put 3 points on the Packers defense. That's it. They allowed 1 good drive on Sunday. And I know Cleveland's offense isn't very good, but still an NFL offense. And the Packers did their job and some on Sunday to help them get a win, but they just couldn't get it. But let's flip sides of the ball. Let's go Packers offense versus the Cowboys defense. This is the weaker part of both of these teams right now to open the season, mainly because of the disaster on Sunday for the Packers and also the disaster on Sunday for the Cowboys defense in Chicago, where Caleb Williams threw the ball all over them. Green Bay total offense this year, 21st overall. They're top 20 in scoring, top 20 in passing, and they're 20th overall in rushing. The rushing game's definitely got to improve for the Packers offense. Dallas defensively, 30th overall in total defense. They've allowed 30.7 points per game in the first 3 weeks. That's 28th in the NFL this year. They're dead last in passing defense. Maybe Micah Parsons would help you with there. But, hey, they did acquire Kenny Clark to help improve the rush defense, and they're 17th overall in rushing defense so far this year. So that's been the strength of their defense so far to open the season. But, Gil, what's the matchup that we should be looking forward to between the Green Bay offense and the Dallas defense? I got to think it's one that's maybe you're circling, and it has to do with a former Packer.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you got to get Kenny Clark blocked. Look, to me, the key to this game for the Green Bay Packers revolves around better offensive line play. That was the biggest problem they had offensively last week. The running game in 3 games has not gotten on track. And this statistic bothered me. Last week against Cleveland, Josh Jacobs was hit on average before he got back to the line of scrimmage. And even though he only averaged less than 2 yards a carry, every yard he gained was after contact.
Yeah.
It's got to be better. The run blocking has got to be better. The pass protection has got to be better. Jordan Love was throwing on average less than 2 seconds after the snap. The ball had to be out. This is a Packers offense that loves to throw downfield and then look short, but even that requires time. And if you think about it, you showed the statistics. Dallas's secondary is ripe for the taking. Mm-hmm. But if you can't get enough time to throw the ball downfield, I could be back there at free safety. You're not going to beat me if you're on your back.
Yeah, it was something where Jordan Love got sacked 5 times in Cleveland on Sunday. 4 of those sacks were on the offensive line because he literally would get in the final step of his drop and he would have a defender right in his face.
Yeah.
And there was the 1 sack at the end of the third quarter where they tried to run a play before the quarter break. That was on Jordan Love. That one, it's like, okay, it's extended play, and he didn't throw it away, and it ended up being a sack, But the first 4 sacks were just all on the offensive line. They know this is something where, I'm circling this for sure too, Gil, because they got to be better, and you can only go up from Sunday. I will say in their defense, Cleveland has probably the best defensive line that they will face this season. Maybe Minnesota is up there too, but I feel like the Cleveland Browns defensive line, Myles Garrett's going to be the best defensive player that they're going to see this season on the defensive line too, without a question, in my opinion. So that's something that I'm looking forward to seeing. And like you said, Gil, the passing defense for the Cowboys is right for the taking. Russell Wilson had a career game against the Cowboys a couple weeks ago in AT&T Stadium, almost led them to a dramatic win until Brandon Aubrey kicked a long field goal for the W. But Russell Wilson just got benched. He got benched less than 2 weeks after having a career game, a renaissance moment for Russell Wilson. And the Cowboys made him look like prime Russell Wilson. The opportunities are there for sure, Gil.
They are if you have enough time to throw the football. And if I'm the Packers, I come out running and maybe I take 1 deep shot early and then I start throwing short. And then that sets up the deep shots a little bit later. But move the darn football first. You've got to establish that. They never really established anything consistent offensively last week.
Josh Jacobs could take a lot of hits, but I don't want him taking more hits in the backfield than he already has. It's just, like you said, he's had no room to run, and you can't put on Josh Jacobs when he's literally getting the ball and there's already a defender right in his face. There's only so much he can do right there. And I do want to mention real quick, I'm curious to see when Elton Jenkins and Kenny Clark are matched up against each other. These guys have been going at it for 7 training camps before now, and now it's a real deal. It's a real game, and it's not in a practice-like setting. Our best versus their best defensive tackle. I'm looking forward to this just to see if they learned a thing or two from one another and if they know each other's weaknesses a little bit. When these two are matched up, Chris Collinsworth, he's going to be calling the game on Sunday Night Football. He's going to be drooling over this matchup too. Yeah,
he is. And, I would really, really love to have both of those guys mic'd up and to hear what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, obviously they would have to broadcast it on a delayed basis because I'm sure most of it would have to be bleeped out. But boy, I would love to hear what's going on between those two guys throughout the course of the game.
I think there'd be a lot of talk about mothers, not necessarily their mothers, but I think there'd be a lot of talk about mothers. You can connect the dots from there, Gil.
Indeed.
Yeah, and anyone listening, connect the dots. Yeah, you get it. Just some real quick stats before we get to some predictions and trivia to wrap up today. Turnover ratio this year, the Packers +1 this season, the Cowboys -5. Been a rough start for the Cowboys. They haven't really done a good job taking care of the ball, and they haven't really taken the ball away as well. Penalties. So Packers, they had the most penalties in a game since 2010, week 3 against the Chicago Bears, a year that ended with a Super Bowl trophy with hoisting the Lombardi trophy. I'm just saying. I'm not saying, but I'm saying. 5th most in penalties this year. Dallas, 24 penalties this season, tied for 12th fewest in the league. Third downs. Actually, Green Bay got better on third down percentage on Sunday. Third down was very good for the Packers as a whole against the Browns on Sunday. 47.5% on third down the offense is doing right now, second best in the league. Defense, 31.8%. That's 6th best in the league. Dallas offense, they're 44.4% on third down this year, 6th in the NFL. But their defense, 53.7% on third down. That is last in the NFL. And then red zone touchdown percentage, Green Bay, 63.6% on offense, tied for 12th in the league. Defensively, 42.9%, tied for 5th in the league. Dallas offensively, 60%. They're right in the middle of the pack. Defensively, 54.6%, which is 14th in the NFL. Not too bad. And then the Cowboys injury report, real briefly. We touched on this a little bit. Wide receiver CeeDee Lamb, most likely not going to go with a high ankle sprain. He hasn't been practicing this week. Rookie right guard Tyler Booker hasn't been practicing this week, most likely not going. Quarterback Trayvon Diggs was a DNP on Wednesday, but he did practice in full on Thursday. It sounds like he's going to play. Fellow corner Deron Bland limited this week, and then a full participant for the Cowboys as well is corner Traquise Bridges. Gil, real quick, why does Green Bay win on Sunday?
Green Bay wins on Sunday if the offensive line is average even. Just get me back to steady and average. That to me is the biggest key. Get back to give Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs a chance to do what they do best.
You took it right out of my mouth, Gil. The offensive line plays any better. This should be a good day for the Green Bay Packers. Why does Green Bay lose?
If the offensive line fails and if they just turn the ball over too many times, if they lose the turnover battle, they're in trouble.
Yeah, I'm with you there. If the offensive line struggles, if they can't get the run game going, and if Dak Prescott takes control of this game, that's a recipe for disaster for the Packers for sure. Gil, with that being said, what's your prediction for Sunday?
I think the Packers do win the game. I think this is a little more high scoring because I don't think the defense for Dallas is very good. Packers 31, Cowboys 23.
I'm thinking along the same lines. I think the Packers do it. I think the score is going to be closer than it looks. I could see Dallas because Dak is honestly the king of garbage time. He really is. Where I could see the Packers having a 2-score lead late in the fourth quarter and they get a touchdown very late to make this closer than it looks. But I think the Packers win 27-20. I think Dak is a good quarterback. They still have a lot of talent on the offense, even though they won't likely have CeeDee Lamb on Sunday, but 27-20. Gil, what articles do you have coming up on Packers Post and Cheesehead TV?
Over on the Packers Post, I talk about the penalties and the problems there and about special teams, how they were very costly to the Packers last week against the Browns. And on Cheesehead TV, I talked about the impact of the offensive line and how I think Matt LaFleur has to adjust his play calling a little bit until everybody's healthy and the offensive line finds itself.
Good time for everyone to recollect and learn from the mistakes and everything like that. And with the penalties too, the pre-snap penalties are what drive me nuts the most. Yeah. I think a lot of the penalties on the secondary, especially in the red zone in that game on Sunday, were very ticky-tack. So those ones I'm okay with because I feel like that could have not been called penalties. But that's why we're not zebras, and someone's got to make those calls. Gil, ready for some trivia?
I am ready for the trivia.
All right. Well, this past Sunday's game, I hate still talking about it, but it was a shocker after the heavily favored, then undefeated Packers fell to the formerly winless Cleveland Browns 13-10. Packers didn't trail the Browns for 1 second the entire game as the Browns nailed a long field goal at the end of regulation to seal the deal. And that loss for Green Bay against the Browns, it was their first regular season loss against the Browns since the 2005 season, nearly 20 years to the day when the Browns came into Lambeau Field and edged the Packers 26-24. Gil, in the 2005 Browns-Packers game, who were the starting quarterbacks for the Browns and the Packers? Obviously, you should get the Packer quarterback.
Well, yeah, Brett Favre has got to be the Packers quarterback, so that's an easy one. For the Browns back,
It's been a circus there.
Yeah, I know. There's only 800 different quarterbacks to pick, right?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Was that Trent Dilfer time?
You nailed it. You're an encyclopedia of knowledge. Brett Favre and Trent Dilfer, and of course, Favre. He started for the Packers that day. He didn't miss a start for practically his entire Packers career. He was 32 of 44 that day for 342 yards, threw 3 touchdowns, but he also threw 2 critical interceptions. And Dilfer, well, he had a career game that day, Gil. It was pretty outstanding for Trent Dilfer. He completed 21 of 32 passes for 336 yards and also threw 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. His 336 yards, that was the second most yards he had ever thrown in a single game in his entire career. And Trent Dilfer was around for quite a long time. He played in 130 games, started 113 of them in his 13-year NFL career. And that game marked only the 6th time in his career where he threw 3 or more touchdown passes without an interception in a game. Remember, the Packers finished, 4-12 that season. They ended up getting A.J. Hawk the next year in the draft and with a top 5 pick, the highest that they picked in a long time. But yeah, Trent Dilfer, when you saw that Trent Dilfer had literally a career game at the back end of the very back end of his career against the Packers that day in Lambeau, you knew the Packers were in for a world of hurt that 2005 season.
Yeah, never a good sign when at that point, Trent Dilfer is beating you that badly.
Yeah, he literally had a career day. Again, Packers 2-1. Cowboys 1-2. They face off Sunday, 7:20 p.m. Central Time in Jerry World. The return of Micah Parsons. Let's hope Micah Parsons just bees Micah Parsons and just keeps it going. Kickoff 7:20 p.m. Central Time, 8:20 on the East Coast. Gil, make sure you get a nap in that day because it's going to be a long night. Hopefully a fun night, but it's going to be a late night, Gil. I hope you get your nap in earlier.
I don't need the nap. I'm a night person. It's all good.
I know you are. But anyone who's watching, get your nap in, stay up, root for the Packers. Let's get OW and let's get back on the winning side of things.
Absolutely. This is a big win that they need, especially with the bye coming up. So let's get it, move on, and be 3-0 against the NFC. That would be ideal.
I want to have a good taste going into the bye. I don't want a sour taste for 2 weeks after Sunday. Let's maybe that loss in Cleveland. And chiming in on the chat was Daryl. He said even after that loss to the Browns by 3 points, he still has a lot of confidence in the Packers. Can't lose twice in a row, especially if they've gotten better. I 100% agree, Daryl. I think that kick in the teeth is exactly what they needed. They were feeling themselves a little bit. It was good timing going into Dallas for sure.
It's got to be a wake-up call. If it's a wake-up call, I'm totally fine with it. Not happy with it, but totally fine with it. So let's see how it all goes. All right. That is it for us today. We'll be right back here next week. Follow us on Twitter @Packers on all things Packers, or to ask us questions. Or you can email us at gbpackerssean@gmail.com. Make sure you're subscribed to Packers Talk on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Big thanks to PackersTalk.com for powering our show, and thank you for listening. Until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.